everyone, Kelly here, and today I would like to talk about all the books I read in March, and I read a lot of books in March. Part of that was because it was middle grade March, and so I read a lot of middle grade books, some of which were really short middle grade books, so I didn't count them ahead of time, of course. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I finished 15 books in March. So yeah, lots of books. And so originally I was like, oh, I'll just like skim over all the 3-star books. Well, I only had one 3-star book. Almost every single book I read this last month was 4 stars. All right, let's start with the only 3-star book. I'll be brief. This is Just Keep Walking by Erin Soderbergh Downing. It's about a girl and her mom who walk the Superior Hiking Trail. I was reading it with my daughter for her school and it was fine. I was excited to read it because it's taking place like basically where we live. Like the Superior Hiking Trail actually goes right through my work. That's not the part they walked. They were up farther north, but I thought it would be better than it was, but it just felt like they were complaining the entire book about walking. And so both my daughter and I were pretty bored, but we were commiserating together about our boredom. All right, and then I had a couple I didn't rate. The first one was The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and 6 More by Roald Dahl. This is a short story collection. I couldn't pinpoint what rating to give it because I was very much all up and down with all these stories. So the actual story, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, I thought that one was fun. It felt very Roald Dahl-like, you know, quirky, fun thing. It's about a man who learns how to see without his eyes, basically. And so then he ends up like gambling a lot and then giving money to the poor. Like, so basically becomes a Robin Hood by being able to like see through cards at the like casinos. So that one was probably my favorite in this collection. And then there were, let's see, I'm not going to talk about every one, but I just want to remember. So there was another one I liked, The Boy Who Talked with Animals. It was about a boy who talked to animals. They had one called The Hitchhiker. It was short. It was fine. That would be kind of maybe a 3-star. There was a nonfiction book about a treasure, like finding some treasure. Thought that one really boring. Probably would have only been like a 2-star. The Swan was another fiction one, but it had so much bullying and I just have a really hard time with bullying. So that would have been like a 2-star. And then there was a little nonfiction about how he became a writer. I really enjoyed that. That was one of my favorite things in there. And then there was his very first story, which was a nonfiction about his time in the war. And so like half of it I really liked, the other half I really didn't like. So I guess maybe it should be a 3-star, but I don't know. If you grew up with Roald Dahl and you want to try another one, I think it's fine, but I would definitely read the title story. I thought that one was interesting, but the rest maybe not as good. All right, and the other one I didn't rate was The Iliad by Homer, or whoever ended up actually writing this. And so this is one of those books that I've been, for years now, I've been kind of like doing some ancient history, self-education, like reading a lot of mythology, learning about ancient civilizations and all that stuff. And my daughter as well, we've both been kind of reading about it. I didn't let her read the Iliad with me, but we did read a children's version of the Iliad and the Odyssey a couple years ago. But like at the time that we were reading the children's versions, I was thinking in my mind, someday I should read the actual epics that are written down. And I wanted to do the Emily Wilson translation. This is the first like big translation done by a woman. And so I wanted to read her version. And I will say, if you're gonna do this, I would recommend the audiobook. I ended up doing this on audiobook and then going back and forth with the book, because in the book it does like, a lot of this is notes in the back. And the notes are kind of like, to me, feel a little like Cliff Notes. So you can like listen to a chapter of the book and then go that. You also could just go to Cliff Notes. They have it online where you can just have the Cliff Notes version. Because sometimes I'll be listening and I'm like, what's going on right now? And so then I would like do the Cliff Notes. I mean, a lot of it is understandable. Like, it's not like I couldn't follow the story. There's so many names that every once in a while I would be confused of who is who, and then I would check the Cliff Notes. And so I didn't rate this because I don't like war stories. Always. I've never really liked a war story. This is all just a war story. Like, all they're doing is like people are dying left and right, just war. And so I don't really find the topic interesting, but it was just like something I wanted to have read sometime in my life. I really actually enjoyed the beginning part. So like in the book, there is a lot in the, like this whole section at the beginning is introduction. And often in classics, I don't read the introduction because they spoil the book. But since this is like part of the zeitgeist, part of like everybody kind of knows the big events of the Trojan War, I would think, like, you know, we all know about Achilles and all that stuff. So, and especially with the popularity of Song for Achilles, is that the Madeline Miller book? A lot of people know the story of Patroclus and Achilles. So like, I know the story, but I liked the introduction in this one. I think it was a good way to like set up for reading it. And I also think the audiobook is the way to go because this story is originally oral history. So for years, the story was passed down orally and then finally was written down. So I think it's just the way to read it is to listen to it, because that's just how people in ancient times would have absorbed the story themselves, was through people reciting it. And this version specifically, the Emily Wilson version, is narrated by Audra McDonald, and she does an amazing job narrating it. So I would recommend it on an audiobook if you want to try this. I'm also going to read The Odyssey over the next couple months because Katie from what's her new channel, Edits and Ink, I believe, I'll link it down below. She is, I mean, I think it's her Instagram that she's doing it on. She's doing like a read through, and I was like most of the way through this book when she announced that she was going to do a read through of the Odyssey. I'm like, oh, perfect, because I just finished the Iliad. So yeah, more for like personal education than actual enjoyment, but I'm glad it's done. It was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, but there is just a lot of war and people dying left and right, and not as interesting as I would have liked it to be. All right, now my huge stack of 4-star. I'll start with my couple adult books since I was just talking about an adult book. Another classic I read over the last few months was The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. My best friend and I, we have for a few years, like several years now, we've been reading a classic and we just take our time. So I think we read this from like November through March. And this is like kind of touted as the like original detective novel. So it's just like a detective mystery. But Wilkie Collins, I think I just like love the way he writes. Like his narration is great. So the first book I had read by Wilkie Collins was The Woman in White. Loved it. It was like pure drama, like, you know, kind of gothic, and like turned very like soap opera-y towards the end of that book, and just like, whoa, where's this all coming from? This one is not quite as like dramatic as that one. It's a little different style, but the way he writes his characters, every single character, we were like, I'm so invested in this character. Even if you don't like the character, I was like invested in listening to them. And the way this works is it's like different narrators. So like the first kind of big chunk of the book is narrated by a butler. And so he is like telling the initial story, and then we skip to other narrators. So like throughout the book, different people are narrating, and we had loved Betteridge is the butler, and we were like, I don't want anybody else to tell a story. We love Betteridge, but then as soon as they switched to a new narrator, we're like, oh, I love this narrator. And so like every single character that was narrating, we just like really enjoyed the writing. So I would recommend Wilkie Collins's books. They're easy to read. This one, because this is like before Agatha Christie, this is before a lot of the big ones, the mystery itself was not like super complicated. And actually, well, I would say I did not predict what happened. We predicted some pieces and maybe like who was kind of the villain or whatever, but we didn't predict exactly how it would go because it kind of came out of left field. But at the same time, it's not like it was like suspenseful. Keep in mind, you know, this was written a long time ago before a lot of the tropes came into detective novels. But if you want to kind of like see where the detective novel kind of originated or some of the first examples, this one, keep in mind, this is written a long time ago. And there is like some portrayals of Indian people in this that not great. And so like, because it was like This is about, the moonstone is a diamond, and the diamond was stolen, like a British person stole it from India. And so then when the moonstone goes missing, they assume that like Indians must have come and taken it. That's like their first assumption. And so then there are like characters from India in this that are kind of like not painted in the greatest light. So just keeping that in mind, this is written a long time ago, so not necessarily, you know, up to the current standards. But in terms of characters and stuff, and well written, I enjoyed it for a classic. And then the last of the adult books that I read was Soulful Simplicity, How Living with Less Can Lead to So Much More by Courtney Carver. This is the same author that wrote the Project 333, which I have read before, which is kind of like how to minimalize your wardrobe. This is kind of like minimalizing over all areas of life. So like she's kind of talking about how she was living a really busy life, like as a single parent, super busy, and then she was diagnosed with MS, and after that diagnosis she had to like slow down, and she had to really simplify a lot of things in her life so that her MS wouldn't have like extra flare-ups. Just how that kind of like changed her whole life, and for the better, by like realizing that she doesn't have to be busy all the time, that she can minimize like what all is coming into her life and what she is putting her energy, like learning how to say no, learning how to discuss with her partner what are the priorities in life and what are we going to focus on. So this is just kind of like not talking about getting rid of all your stuff. It's more about how do you minimize life in general, and how not to be like stuck in the like, you know, the hamster wheel of life, you know. So I liked it. Nothing like necessarily mind-blowing, but good reminders. And I pulled out some key pieces. Like for me, self-help, it's like if I can pull out a few key pieces to put into my life, I count it good. And now on to the middle grade books. We'll go kind of quickly. So I have More to the Story by Hannah Hun. And this is a Little Women retelling, sort of. Like, it's definitely like the four sisters. Each of them represent one of the sisters, like the first letter of each name represents. So we have like Jamila, who is the Joe character, and is it gonna name all the names? Because you know I'm bad at names. Of course it doesn't. But yeah, so like there was a girl that started with an A and a B and an M and a J. Sorry, that I just am not good at remembering names, and they didn't put it in the front flap. We've got four sisters. It does not follow the plot line of Little Women though. It's more just like the characters that are pulled. So just so you know. And this, it was really lovely. A story about four sisters, but then also there's a lot of things happening in their lives. So their father had recently lost his job, and so he's taking a temporary job where he would be out of the country. I can't remember where he was going, but yeah, he was going somewhere for like 6 months, and so he would be gone for a while, and so they would, be missing their dad. Yeah, and then their sister, who represents Beth, starts getting sick and all that stuff. So it does have some of the elements of Little Women. I thought this was really sweet and a nice, like, diverse kind of Little Women inspired book. So like I said, it doesn't follow the plot line of Little Women at all, just more the characters. And I thought it was good. And then we have The Forgotten Girl by India Hill Brown. This is a ghost story. And this was just like a fun ghost story, but with some historical actual learning in it, which was good. Like I'm recommending this to my daughter because she's getting into ghost stories, because I think it also like teaches you some things. So we are following a girl named Ivy who feels like really not like, she feels forgotten and ignored in her school. She's the captain of the step dance team, and they invited all these captains to this like luncheon and gave out awards, and they forgot her, and like, so she feels like she's forgotten in a lot of ways. And she one night is out in the snow with her best friend, who's also her neighbor, and they're playing in the snow, and they uncover a grave, and it's like they didn't know that there was a cemetery kind of really close to their neighborhood. So then they decided to do a school project where they look at abandoned graveyards, and they kind of learn all about like segregated graveyards. So these would have been graveyards that happened at a time when it was like legal to like separate by race in cemeteries. So cemeteries could say they were whites only, and they would have like kind of separate cemeteries for Black people. And so that's what she's learning about. And then she's doing a project on it. So we're like learning as well about these segregated cemeteries. And so it's like fun ghost story. Like there's definitely like creepy ghost story elements, but then we're also like learning about history. So I would recommend it if you want to learn a little history while having spooky ghost story, or if you have a kid in your life that likes creepy ghost story things. And then I read Rainy Nightingale by Kate DiCamillo. And I had this for years, and I just had been putting it off because I'm not as much, I like my middle grade mostly in speculative forms. I don't read a lot of like contemporary middle grade. But I like Kate DiCamillo. So I was like, I'll read this. And it actually is kind of historical fiction. It takes place in the 70s. But I just loved the characters in this and their friendships. So we're following these 3 girls that are learning how to do baton because they want to like join this like beauty contest basically, and they need a talent. And so they're learning baton, but it's really not about that because I don't think they ever actually like really learn baton because something always happens every time they get together for practice. And so they just kind of go on adventures, the 3 of them. They're all dealing with their own things. In this story, we're following Raimi, whose father has just left their family. And so she's kind of dealing with that. And then she meets Louisiana and Beverly, and they become friends and kind of it's very slice of life, but I don't know. It's really about the friendships. And then the next one is about Louisiana, and it just like follows each one of them. So still would recommend that one. I read another Roald Dahl. I was kind of just going through I own all the books that I had from Roald Dahl as a kid, and this was the last one that I had to read to have reread all the books from my childhood. And this is George's Marvelous Medicine. This is a teeny tiny little one, so like takes hardly any time at all to read. And it's just about a boy who creates a medicine to give to his mean old grandmother and see what happens to her. And so yeah, that one's just kind of a fun, silly one. And then I read Slacker by Gordon Korman. And this one was one I was reading with my daughter, and I at first had no interest in it. I looked at this cover and I'm like, this is going to be a book that I am not interested in. I'm just reading it to read with her. And then I found this hilarious. I really was like laughing out loud sometimes. It was really fun. So don't judge a book by its cover. I had a good time reading this and talking with her about it. And it's about this boy who is a slacker. He basically doesn't want to do anything in life other than play video games. That is like his goal. He loves his video games. He has to go to school because they make him, but this is all he wants to do in life. But when he accidentally like basically catches his house on fire because he's so absorbed with his video games, he doesn't notice that the house is on fire. His parents say he has to like kind of make it up by doing something. And so he decides that he has to like join something, do something other than video games. And so he decides, instead of actually joining something, that he's going to create this new club that's like basically like a doing things club, like a community service club. But that he's not actually gonna do anything. He's gonna create it and he's gonna make a website and he's gonna pretend it's happening, but he's not gonna do anything. He's just gonna pretend he's making this club. But then people start joining the club and he keeps like being like, no, it's not a real club, but more people join and more people do it. So as the book goes on, he kind of ends up having to be the president of this club that he didn't even mean to be a real club. He meant to just it be a lie and pretend like he was doing it. And so the slacker suddenly has to do all these things for the community. And so it was fun. And there is a beaver actually in the book. So yeah, I would suggest it. It was more hilarious than I thought. And so, pick up the audiobook if you want just like a funny little middle grade. Okay, and then I read The In-Between by Marina Cohen. This was part of like, I might even do a video on this. I had done like a try a chapter thing, and there were a couple of books that when I tried the first chapter, I just wanted to continue them. So this is one where I read the first chapter and I was like, I want to know what happens, because the first chapter is pretty explosive. And so then I just sat down and finished it. And this one, when you go like on Goodreads, it says it's like a middle grade retelling of The Shining. I do not agree with that. I think it's a retelling, but I can't tell you what it's a retelling of. It's a retelling of a song, in my opinion. It definitely is. Like, there are it is blatantly a retelling of a song, but I can't tell you what song that is. because then you would know kind of the twist and the explanation to the story. But I think as an adult, it's pretty obvious. A kid probably wouldn't know where the story's going. But what is said on the back, the description, is that Quinn and Kara have been best friends since kindergarten, and Kara and her family about to move away. So Quinn is joining them on a trip to their new home in the West. And they stop at a hotel, and then people start disappearing and weird things are happening. So this is definitely like a spooky, kind of creepy middle grade, and they're solving a mystery. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Why are people disappearing? But as an adult, I think you would catch on of what's actually happening. But this is like super quick. Like, I think I read this in like a day because it's just very absorbing. So I would recommend it, and it's kind of fun to like figure out what is inspiring it. All right, another book I read with my daughter. I caught up on a bunch of the books I was supposed to read with my daughter this year. She has like 12 books she has to read for school throughout the whole school year, and I told her I would read them with her, and I got behind, and I was like, middle grade March, perfect time to catch up on all the books I was supposed to read with you. So this is another one that was with her. This is Legends of Lotus Island, The Guardian Test by Christina Soon-Tornvat, and this was so fun. I really enjoyed this. It's a really short one. It's a series of 4 books, and I think I read this like in a day or two. It went by really quick, but it was really cute. It's like an adventure kind of book. We're following this girl who it gets invited to join this academy that's basically to become a guardian. And in this world, guardians can, turn into animals. So each guardian has an animal inside them that they can become through this like training. And then they're like protectors of the world and of the environment and all that. And so she is like, this whole world is a bunch of islands. And she's from an island that's like more of a poor island, and a lot of the kids that are going to this academy are from like this big city island that is like more rich, and so like they kind of look down upon her as like a farmer, and so then she kind of feels left out. She also feels like she doesn't know what her inner animal is, and like she's just worried that she's gonna be the only one at this academy that doesn't end up changing into her animal, thing, her animal guardian. So it's kind of like coming of age adventure, and I'm assuming in the future ones that they will kind of fully embody their guardian thing, personas. And so I'm excited to continue because they're really quick and fun. And this was one of my favorites that I read with my daughter. Like, I just had a good time with it. All right, and then the group read that we did for middle grade March was Max and the House of Spies by Adam Gidwitz. And this is a World War II novel with a little bit of speculative stuff in it. So we're following Max, who is from Germany. He's Jewish. And so he is sent out of the country, during the war, to keep him safe. So his parents sent him, and he gets to go to England. And then he's, with like a foster family. And so he starts to get to know this family, but he really wants to get back to Germany because he wants to find his family and protect his parents, even though it'd be really unsafe for him to go back to Germany. And he's got these 2 little guys that are like mythical creatures. I think one's from Jewish folklore and one's from German folklore, from what I could tell from there's like a little thing at the end where the author kind of explains some things from history, like how much of this is accurate history. There are a lot of characters in this that are actually like real people from World War II. So he was kind of explaining what is like real history and what is made up. Obviously having these 2 little like fantasy creatures on his shoulders was the fantasy part. And he becomes a spy, for like the British government. And that's, obviously not like true history, but fun. And it's a fun way of learning about what was going on. And this is like, towards the beginning of the war. And so I really thought this was interesting because so many times our books are like more once we get into like the concentration camps and we learn a lot about that part of the war, I feel like. But this is kind of like before people realized how far it was going to go, and that the reason for the war wasn't like the Holocaust. It was like all the stuff that led up to the war and the politics and all that. And so I thought this was a really interesting place to start the story and really see the prejudices that led to the beginning of the war and the politics that led to that, and then see people starting to see something else is happening, that like that this war is going different than maybe past wars, and some atrocities are starting and all that, and how it started slow. And so I think that hearing that from like a kid's point of view, it's an interesting way to learn about that part of the war. So I really like this. This does not feel like a complete book though. So I will tell you, if you're gonna read this, be prepared to probably read the second book. It's a duology, because this is like, you know, like there's supposed to be an arc in books, you know, where like we, you know, set up rising action, you know, big conflict, you know, climax, and then we have like falling action and resolution. This is like, we end up here and there's no like resolution. And so it doesn't feel like complete because we don't have the whole arc. So you probably need to finish it if you want the complete arc. And I haven't finished it yet, so I feel like I didn't read a whole story. So that's the only thing I don't love. I don't love it when books don't have a falling action. Even if they're the first in a series, I want to have some falling action. So just keep that in mind. You might want to have to keep going. All right, and then I read a graphic novel, Kindred Dragons by Sarah Masinga, and this is a Anna Green Gables retelling with dragons. It doesn't follow the like just like with the Little Women one, it doesn't follow the exact plot, but it does have a lot of the characters. We're following a character who is very Anne-coded, and this character, her name's Alice, and it does take place on Prince Edward Island. But in this world, women can become kindreds with dragons. So if some women, when they're girls, get given an egg by the fairies, and then they connect with that dragon, and then their life is connected to the dragon. So if the dragon dies, or if they die, the other dies. So they really become connected. So it's kind of like kindred spirits, but kindred dragons. And Alice really wants to be a kindred. She really wants a dragon, and it runs in families, and she is adopted, or she's not adopted. Her parents were adopted by her grandmother. So she's living with her grandmother, and her grandmother is a kindred, but technically she's not blood related to her grandmother. So she is like, am I going to become a kindred? I don't know, but she really wants to have a dragon. And then she meets this other dragon in the woods, and trying to figure out why this dragon is without their kindred. And yeah, it's a cute story. I really like it. I really loved the character of Alice. Like I said, she's very Anne-coded. So of course she's lovable and fierce, and yeah, a great character. And then I really liked the dragon character, and yeah, this is a sweet story. I hope that she's writing more. It says on Goodreads that this is like #1, but this just came out last year in 2025, so I don't know when the next one will be coming out, but it's really sweet and I liked it. So if you want to like a little feel of Anna Green Gables but with some fantasy and some dragons, it's a fun one. And the last one, my only 5-star of the month, is A Tale Dark and Grim by Adam Gidwitz. And this is the same author that did Max and the House of Spies, but I read this one first. This is one that was like one of my try a chapters. I picked it up, tried a chapter, and I was like, oh my gosh, why has this been sitting on my shelf for years? I'm like in love with this from the very beginning. It was perfect humor for me, so good. It's a fairy tale retelling of like Grimm's fairy tales. We're following Hansel and Gretel, but this is dark. So keep that in mind. If you have a middle grader, I wouldn't just hand this to any middle grader. There is dark, and the book even tells you that. It has a narrator like in it that pops in, and this is even like the narrator even tells you, if you have any sensitive kids, put this away now. I was just seeing if I could see that, but like, yeah, before I go on, a word of warning: Grimm stories, the ones that weren't changed for little kids, are violent and bloody. And what you're going to hear now is violent and bloody as you can imagine. So if that bothers you, stop now. So the narrator tells you, don't keep going if you don't want it to be bloody. So keep that in mind, that this isn't like a super sweet middle grade. This is definitely kind of real Grimm's fairy tale kind of middle grade, but with so much humor. The narrator pops in all the time and is hilarious. I found this both hilarious and bloody and really fun. I really enjoyed this. So I gave it 5 stars because I was just like, the whole time I was just like, this is like my favorite kind of middle grade where it's, which I don't know if that says something about me, but just is like, yeah, quirky and weird and maybe a little violent, but at the same time funny and tender and a great story about siblings. So if you like fairy tales, this is a book for you, as long as you don't want it to be like super sweet and tame. Yeah. So favorite book of the month. That's it for me. If you also participate in Middle Grade March, what were your favorite books of the month? Did you enjoy the group read? And I will see you next time. Bye.